Welcome back to Themes in Environmental Literature in 4 Minutes or Less. Today I'll be talking about environmental justice, or rather, environmental injustice. This is a theme found across environmental literature and eco-poetry, particularly focusing on people of low economic status and minorities, who are more likely to be affected by environmental problems and live near things such as landfills, dump sites, power plants, and even airports. And Muriel Rukeyser's Alloy from The Book of the Dead talks about what happened to men in the Gauley Tunnel disaster of the 1930s, where workers were exposed to silica without adequate protection as a company quickly made a tunnel through a mountain to divert a river. What the poem doesn't necessarily take into consideration is the people who live downstream from the diverted and now silica-polluted river, and instead it focuses on the lives lost due to the silica exposure from the workers. Now, the death toll is unclear, with estimates between 117 to over 1,000 deaths. This uncertain number alone points to the environmental injustice that happened in West Virginia. This poem opens by describing the environmental threat that is much worse than gangsters with guns. This is the most audacious landscape. The gangster's stance with his gun smoking and out is not so vicious as the commercial field, its hill of glass. Now, even though the mining of the silica was at first an accident, there are other mining instances that were and are far from that. In Leslie Marmon Silko's book, Ceremony, Native Americans live very close to a uranium mine, or rather, a uranium mine was built very close to the Native American reservation. Now, this location was chosen because the Native Americans were and are in the minority. Their lives and land is seen or was seen as less valuable than white men's lives and white men's land. Tayo sees the mining as more than just an injustice towards him and his people, but to the earth itself. And on page 222, he observes a piece of uranium and thinks to himself, they had taken these beautiful rocks from deep within earth, and they laid them in a monstrous design, realizing destruction on a scale only they could have dreamed. Now, it wasn't just the uranium mines that harbored environmental injustice, but the testing of bombs as well. There's a short poem by William Stafford that is called At the Bomb Testing Site, and the last stanza reads, there was just a continent without much on it, under a sky that never cared less, ready for a change the elbows waited, the hands gripped hard on the desert. Now this stanza highlights the barrenness of the lands chosen to test these bombs. The continent without much on it doesn't refer to the whole continental U.S., but it refers to the part of the U.S. deemed worthless enough for bomb testing. These lands were not unoccupied by people, however. The so-called barrenness of this land made it very cheap, and therefore occupied by those of low economic status and those from minorities. The sky that never cared may be referring to whites that chose to test the bombs, not caring about those whose lives were close by. And environmental literature and eco-poetry continue to give voices to those suffering from environmental injustice, and do not allow us to forget those who have suffered in the past.